Hello, everybody, and welcome to this Sparring Partners. And this is Monica Paolini from Sensafili, and I'm your host today. And today we are going to talk about what we learned from 5G, what we are actually learning from 5G, and how we can use this learning to move forward, to improve technology, and more generally to learn from our experiences as we do. And I have the pleasure to have with me Azita Arvani. And so she's going to introduce herself, but before she does, I'm going to say how I met her. And that was when she was working at Nokia, and she had most amazing titles. She was just looking at innovation. So that was the most fun, one of the most fun jobs you can possibly have. And from there, she moved on to become the CEO for the Americas for Rakuten Symphony. So she's been, through more than 1G, but she's been directly involved in 5G. But Azita, why don't you tell us who you are, where you're coming from, where you're going to?
Thank you, Monica, and I really look forward to our conversation here. So I've been in the telecom industry since the 2G days, since the data started coming onto the networks, and since seeing the transition to 3G, 4G, and 5G. And like you mentioned, I've always been interested in bringing disruptive innovations to the telecom market, especially from smaller companies. And my most recent position was with Rakuten Symphony as CEO of Americas. But I've been with vendors, with startups that have brought innovation to telcos, and also with the operator as well. So kind of seeing a 360 view of things in telecom.
So, so you've been working on the disruptive end. So it's like innovation, moving forward, and doing new things. But in order to be really disruptive, I would argue, you really need to learn from the past as well. Because the success you get in the future, whatever thing that you do is new, you need to kind of understand what the dynamics of it are. So learning is so crucial. And in the wireless industry, and probably in other ones as well, I can talk about that. We often have a tendency to just look forward without trying to remember what happened before. And whatever happened before wasn't perfect, but it was good enough. There was always something good, and we can build on that. Is that, how do you see, how do you see the kind of like the need to innovate, to be disruptive, to do something completely different, but at the same time to learn from what you've done before?
Right. So I love the way you framed that question, because it, as they say, if you don't study history, you're bound to repeat it. And I feel that all the experiences that you gain while you go through these various experiences with bringing new Gs to the communication network or other technology, then if you don't reflect back on it, if you don't take the time to reflect back on it, then you don't learn as much, So, and obviously we learn the most from our failures, and we learn from our wins. And I had seen that a lot of people are now not quite happy with the way the 5G is rolling out. And since we are right at the half point of rollout of 5G, we're kind of 5 years into it almost. And if you look at the population coverage of 5G, including China and including all the spectrum, is about 50%. So we're right at the nice point where we could look back at what has happened, and then lessons learned for the next half of 5G as we move into 6G.
Absolutely. And actually, this is my biggest lesson when I was studying dance, and I wasn't very good at it. And I would fall all the time, and I was very frustrated. I went to my teacher, and she said, well, the only way you learn to dance is by falling. So I think that that's kind of the same concept here. So, okay, let's see, what is that you personally, or maybe personally from your personal experience, learned in terms of what is that was sort of good, bad, what is that we can do, or we have to keep in mind as we move forward, I guess.
Exactly. So as you know, I was reflecting on this, and now that I can have a much more independent view of these things, having I sort of came up with 8 different types of things that we should keep in mind, and I'll go through it one time, and I would love to have a conversation with you around those and see if you agree with them or not. When I was running a consulting company, you know, starting with 2G, moving into 3G, one kind of framework that helped me a lot as I was helping the clients was this notion of having a framework, and that framework for me, the acronyms were DNA, like device, network, and applications, and that those 3 pillars have to be in harmony for it to work. So the devices have to be there, the networks have to be there, and applications have to be there. And if we just have like networks but not the devices, that doesn't work. That happened actually in 3G. I don't know if you remember the first sort of big deployment of 3G was with Docomo, and they sort of came out with the 3G network, but the devices lagged a little behind. So without devices, obviously that whole thing like doesn't work. So and the same thing with applications, and if that, so that the whole DNA has to work. And if I look at 5G, the big difference that we have from 4G and the prior generation is that we are moving our customer base from consumers to enterprises. And that is a very huge shift, and it's a very complex process. So enterprises are not just a collection of consumers, right? So enterprises need much more sort of their own specific way of sales, marketing, business development, return on investment, being able to fit inside their business processes, device management, provisioning, security. I mean, you name it. It's so much different than consumers, and even the pace of product innovations that come to enterprises is different than just consumers picking up the latest iPhone. So I think that's one thing that maybe we didn't give the telecom industry enough sort of headway or runway to sort of see that this is a complex thing, and there are all these different things that have to come together to make the entire thing work.
Yeah, and this is really an important point, which is particularly important, as you say, because of the complexity. And when you get the complexity and you get all the pieces that have to fall together, you know, it's very easy to have a demo to show that something works, and it works. The
Right.
technology works.
Right.
However, the fact that you have something that works doesn't mean that you have something that is going to be, well, it is deployable on a large scale, but so, like the enterprise has to get all of those things together and have them work at the same time. So the fact that something is available is not really enough to get it deployable in a, I mean, you need time for things to kind of percolate in a way.
Exactly. You remember, Monica, in one of the Mobile World Congresses, I think it was 3-4 years ago, that we talked about a remote surgery, and there was also somebody getting their appendix done, and some other surgeon was consulting, and it happened in Barcelona. And you know, that whole thing, yes, we could show a demo, but for that to come true, I mean, so many parts of that have to be worked out with the medical system, with the records, with the patient, the privacy, the security. I mean, it's a whole lot more complicated than just proving that the communication part of it works.
Yeah, and you know, for things like that, or even, you know, like car, I mean, vehicle-related applications, there's all sorts of liability issues, liability, safety. So, you know, it's in a way the technology is the, I wouldn't say the most trivial bit, but it's just like it's an enabler, but there is way more that you need to go through, not just that.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which then dovetails into my second point, if I could go to that, that it really takes a village to bring a sophisticated application to the market. You know, operators are a part of it, connectivity is part of it, but they're not necessarily running the show, right? So you have to build that ecosystem. So as you were just mentioning, operators cannot just come in and deliver the connectivity and expect that the entire thing is going to work. But the telecom industry can be the driver, can be the enabler, can be the collaborator, and sort of make sure that the entire movement is making progress.
Yes, and I think it is important because I think that we have a little bit of a bias to look at it from an operator-centric perspective. So everybody will tell you that they need to partner with everybody.
Yeah.
But it's one thing to say it, but when you partner with someone, that means that you're not at the center of the universe necessarily.
Right.
So partnering means also giving up control, giving up or not even, it's not so much giving up control, but you have to not just be willing to offer a product, but also listen to what people, need.
Exactly.
And I think that there is room for learning there. Let's just put it
right.
that.
And if you remember, for the enterprises, we've had a lot of tier ones that have gone in and acquired various other companies trying to put this whole enterprise connectivity together. But those, again, if you want to have entire control over the whole system, that's going to be a very big and very expensive proposition, and the risk of failure is high. And it's not something that's scalable. Only very few tier ones with lots of cash flow can do that. But if it's more of a movement and then building an ecosystem, it's easier for a lot more operators to participate. And then you share the vision, you share the rewards, you share the risks.
Absolutely. No, that's yes. What else?
So my third
You're just like you're so much advice. Let's keep going.
My third point is about having what I call life-size proofs of concept. A lot of times people like for the market adoption, people are not just okay with a little POC or a little trial. They want to see like something bigger, something in real life type things to happen. And so I'll give you two examples of that. Like in Rakuten Symphony, we had Rakuten Mobile, like the whole end-to-end mobile network in Japan that became that life science sort of trial that people can look at and say, okay, because before that it was like, oh, that will only work in urban areas. Oh, that only works in suburban areas. Oh, like, but then if you do like an entire country end to end, you go, okay, now you have rural areas, you have suburban, you have urban. So, I mean, they could still say, oh, that's a small country, blah, blah, blah. But at least a lot of sort of initial kind of objections kind of go away that, hey, this can be done. And so that's just one way. I mean, similarly, like when we talk about venues and like sporting venues and what kinds of connectivity and various technologies can help, like I was mentioning to you before we recorded that I went to the first game in the LA Clippers, a new arena called Intuit Dome. And the level of technology connectivity, 5G, Wi-Fi, it was just amazing, right? But now the more the other venues start looking at that, so okay, now I could see that, hey, that can be done. I could have like every seat can have its own cell phone charger. We can have 5 bars for our 5G no matter where we are in the stadium, and so that helps a lot. With the enterprise, I know like you have done some work with folks and talked to people in China, and I know they're doing a lot of interesting things. So I'd be very interested in knowing like, that could play as a life-size proof of concept for the rest of us, right?
Yeah, and it's very exciting because you understand that different countries use the same technology but in different ways, which is really interesting, and that kind of shows you the power of technology to do all sorts of things, but also, I guess back to what you were saying, that, you need to, like, it takes a village, it takes devices and whatever. You need to put the technology in the context of what is that you want or you care about doing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so in different countries, different things might be possible or desirable, or people are willing to pay for, whatever it is. But also, I would say that you need to kind of be ready. I wouldn't say for failure, but for something that as you go for the real, I mean, not you go beyond the trial. So when you have a trial, everything is under control and everything kind of works most of the time, right?
Yeah.
But then when you go from trial or to larger trial or commercial, you also need to accept the fact not everything is going to work perfectly.
Right. And
And I
then
think,
see that with
yeah, yeah,
whoever, like even
yeah,
with Intuit Dome, like the first concert they had there, it wasn't, not everything was together. And the first NBA game they had there was some wrinkles that had to be ironed out. But that's just the nature of technology. That shouldn't stop us
yeah.
from going forward.
Well, and that's exactly, part of having to learn, because if you don't get that kind of glitches, you'll never go anywhere, because if you want the thing to be perfect, you'll never roll out anything. So,
Exactly.
so when, again, when I was talking about whatever's happening in China, for instance, it's amazing what they do, like in enterprises. But does everything work perfectly? No, obviously they're not going to be, advertising in a major way in the same way that nobody does, but you need to kind of learn from it so that you can improve, and that's fine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And like ports, for example, are a great example of that, right? The ports there are very automated and like you hardly see people there, right? So it's just looking at that and or the way they think about the traffic management of the traffic, like the real traffic with cars and everything. It's just that those are the kinds of things that we could see how it works there, and we can
Yeah,
customize it to the way and for our own requirements.
yeah, absolutely. You need the flexibility.
Exactly, exactly. And sort of tying into that, my next point is that in order for our customers, in this case, enterprises are the sort of like these um, customers for 5G that we still haven't quite figured out how to go work with in a big way, right? Collectively as telecom industry, is that we must believe that these things are possible, and believe it before we see it, and then create that vision for our customers either through POCs or through like educational informing them. So because the customers have to see it before they believe it, right? It's like show me how this works, show me how that works. Because and in order to do that, like whether it's with proof of concepts or with not waiting for the customer to demand something from us, like being one step ahead of the customer to say, hey, like before the enterprises come to us and say, hey, we have these cars that we are rolling out and we want them to be connected or something. So we could go in with the use cases that we think could work for them, right? So then get them to see what can be possible with the 5G, with slicing, with the new IoT devices, etc.
Yeah, and I think it's important because, I mean, I remember when working in with the verticals, sometimes it's like, you go inside, tell me what are your requirements. And because that's what we think about, right? You
Right,
need to know what you need, right?
right,
The
right, right.
technical require, what's the latency and whatever. And sometimes they don't know that necessarily, but they kind of know what they want to do, but how they do it, you have to it's a sort of back and forth.
Exactly.
You cannot just have them tell you exactly what they want to do, because that's kind of,
Right.
if they
But
knew it already.
the beauty of it though is that I truly believe that the telecom industry can help every other industry in their digital transformation and AI transformation, right? So if you look at digital transformation, you have cloud, you have AI, you have IoT, and you have uh, connectivity, whether it's 5G, 6G, Wi-Fi, satellite, right? So those are at least 4 things that will be in the sort of pillars of digital transformation for every sector, every industry, right?
Mhm.
So and that connectivity being one pillar of that is something that then we can help all the other industries. And also with the way, with this open RAN and uh, distributed way that 5G works, and creating edge clouds, that can also help with AI transformation, right? So I think telcos should really look at this as something that this wave of digital transformation, this wave of AI transformation that is sweeping across all of sectors, and they are a big enabler of that and provider of solutions for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Next.
So on to the next point. The accelerate the adoption of next curve with future proofing of the standards. If you look at the standards, we started with the sort of massive broadband as the first part of 5G, and then we moved on to like ultra reliability, low latency, and then we're moving to sort of more denser IoTs and so forth. And along these, we also have AI and machine learning that's coming in, that's going into like 5G advanced, which starts with release 18, and then Open RAN that sort of breaks this apart and distributes things even more. And um, I believe that some of these things should be more seen as requirements than optional capabilities, because then it makes it easier for us to seamlessly move to the next generations of things. If we know that the future is about cloud, that the future is about AI, that the future is about opening the architecture and increasing a higher supply chain. If you know these are the right directions that we need to go, so why not put it in standards as quickly as possible, and make them non-optional, make them like a required part of the standards sooner rather than later.
But isn't that an issue that if you kind of like have more of a heavy-handed uh, push on the standards, it's kind of hard for different operators to be different in the sense like, so, and some people complain that, 3GPP, you standardize everything. So there is more than you can possibly use. And my view is more like, well, standardize whatever, and then people pick and choose whatever they need.
Yeah,
Because
no, I
not
agree.
everybody has the same needs, and then not everybody's trying to do the same thing.
No, I agree that not everybody is going to pick up every capability. But if I do want to do AI, and if you do want to do AI, then the way we do it, then it should be compatible and interoperable.
Yeah.
Right? You could decide not to do it, or I could decide to do it at the later release. But if we decide to do it at some point, then the sort of the standard interfaces and those kinds of things should come earlier, rather than saying, oh, it's optional. And then in that case, if I pick it up early, then I might get penalized for it, because later on something else could get standardized and I'm out of luck. Right.
Yeah.
That's
But I
the
mean,
part.
yeah, I guess that at the very least they should have. I mean, like with AI, you need to start having interfaces that reflect the need that the AI will have.
Will
That
happen, and
doesn't
will
have
help with
necessarily
the,
have today. Yeah.
yeah, it will help with the traffic steering. It will help with energy
Yeah.
savings, all of that, right? So if I'm an
Mhm.
operator, I want to take advantage of that sooner rather than later. So I shouldn't be punished for it. Like I should be like
Yeah.
celebrated in a way, if you will, right?
Well, and also you just enable it. You
Right.
make it easier for it to happen.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that, and then also, I think as we are moving more and more into software-based networks, into software-defined networking and radios, and more programmable networks, this whole sort of 10-year cycle should shrink, right? So like, there's no reason for this to be a 10-year cycle, like, right? Because we have less hardware, the hardware is much more standardized, whether now CPUs and later we adding GPUs and so on and so forth. So why are we making it a 10-year thing as we did a
Yeah.
decade ago? So that's
Yeah,
another.
yeah, and yeah, I guess that there are some kind of like I'll say almost technology marketing reasons why you want to have 5G, 6G, and whatever.
Yeah.
But we don't work in. I don't think that the step function
Yeah.
here
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to reflect,
The progress that things have
which is
made, right?
more of an
Yeah.
incremental and continuous progress
Right.
rather than.
Right.
Which is why I don't really understand, well, I understand it for whatever. There's many reasons, many historical, but in reality,
Right. I mean, but
it
historically, because things have been very hardware based, so it
yeah,
makes sense for things to be a little longer. Like the standards come
yeah,
out in June of 2024, and then the vendors have something in June of 2025, and then operators pick it up by in the next 6 or 12 months. So right, so there's that kind of
yeah.
thing. But if it is more and more software, so you would think that the reaction time and that should be much faster. So
And it should be able to be implemented in commercial networks faster as well.
absolutely.
So, you don't need to wait for somebody to actually build the hardware. You
Right.
can just go.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So then moving on to my number 6, if you're keeping track, is sometimes one generation lays the foundation for the next generation. And like if you look at 3G, if you remember 3G when they announced the spectrum auction, especially in Europe, they spent billions and tens of billions on spectrum auctions for 3G, right? And then after a while, it was sort of like there was all this critique about, oh, operators spent so much money and then nothing is coming out of it and so forth. But 3G was, to me, really was a foundation for, first of all, making sure that it's one consistent interface. Because if you remember in 3G, we had CDMA, GSM, and all of that, like they were different. So it's one unifying platform. And then data, the multimedia was just starting to get into the mobile networks and services and so forth. So, but 3G sort of laid the foundation for 4G. So 4G, you could say it's been very, very successful, right? And there are a lot of new services that have run on top of that, like Uber and Lyft, and those people could not exist without LTE 4G, right? So in a way, 5G might be a little bit like that, in a sense that we are making a huge shift from serving consumers either directly or through the customers, or like B2B to C type of thing, or and as we're moving from that to having a B2B for just enterprises directly, then this is laying off the foundation, making sure 5G has all the capabilities that we want, like the broadband, the low latency, the dense IoT, and then reliability, all of that. And as that happens, then we get ready for real enterprise adoption of 5G. Now, whether that happens, I'm hoping that happens in the second half of 5G rather than waiting for 6G. But again, there's been a great foundational work that technology-wise has been done in 5G, and that could be built upon as we go forward.
Yeah, actually, this is an area where I think that we have not learned so much from the past. So actually, I was involved in a 3G auction and trying to determine the price of spectrum based on what kind of things people want to do and how much they're willing to pay. And so, and so we tried to figure out, what is that people could use this for.
Yeah.
And by and large, I don't remember the numbers, but by and large, it just didn't happen right away. And it didn't happen exactly as expected, because we thought that, nobody wants to be on video, individuals, only businesses, but not individuals. And how wrong was that?
Right, exactly.
But then, and it didn't just, at the beginning, it didn't quite work, but then it did. And it did in ways that we were not really expecting. So sometimes the fact that you have a network, you have a technology, and you think it's going to be good for something, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's really the way it's going to work.
Exactly. And an
Sometimes they're going to be
example.
surprised that, sound like, who'd have thought that?
Exactly, exactly. And similarly, like now we're talking about 5G advanced, we talk about extended reality and how that's going to,
Yeah.
but I am thinking, instead of saying extended reality, we should really just say time critical applications. And
Yes.
who knows if it's going to be extended reality first or some other, remote surgery or something else. But the point is the networks are creating the underlying platform to
Yeah.
enable that low latency time critical applications, and then the actual
Yeah.
innovation and applications comes from the rest of the ecosystem.
Yeah, which is like, a couple years ago, we were talking about the metaverse, and now it's kind of,
Exactly.
but the idea is still, it's just like the way we think about it, the way it's going to turn out might be a little bit different than what you were expecting initially. But that's the beauty of it, right? So
That's exactly, and
we
that's
should
the
just
beauty of it.
go with
And
it.
right. So the next one,
Yeah.
number 7, we're getting close
Mhm.
to the end, is I think it's very important for everyone, but especially for telcos, to avoid what I call tech washing.
Mhm.
Like when cloud was the big deal, a lot of companies were saying, oh, we do cloud, we're cloud this, we're cloud that. So to me, that was like cloud washing. And now with AI, a lot of people are doing AI washing, we do this. And then with even Open RAN, like there are a lot of people saying Open RAN washing, that sort of thing. But the problem is when, cloud has a certain set of benefits that it brings. And if you don't actually do what the real take advantage of those cloud benefits, you cannot offer it to the customers, and so you end up losing the trust that the customer has, and all those benefits just become hollow. So I think it's super important that, like, these technologies are moving forward and are important, so then implement them the way they were meant to be implemented to provide the benefits that they're supposed to have. So in the case of, for example, cloud, it's all about scalability, flexibility, resilience, efficiencies, all of that. And if you just cloud washing it, like by just virtualizing and your whole big software on top in a virtual machine, like you can't really take advantage of that. So, go all the way in with the cloud. Similarly with AI, if you're just saying you're using AI, but you're not really using AI in the best way, then it's just kind of you're creating disillusion for the customer.
Yeah, and I guess you're kind of trivializing the technology,
Right. Exactly.
and you kind of make it seem kind of like, yeah, something you just buy off the shelf, you put it there and it's going to be working. But
Exactly.
everything new requires actually effort, knowledge,
Exactly. And it might take
understanding,
a year or 2 or
you
3
know.
before you actually bring it to your solution. So take the time and do that. Okay, so the last one for me is also a very important one, is this notion that innovation happens at the intersection of various technologies. So a lot of times we want this amazing application to come out of 5G, but an amazing application doesn't just need mobile networking, it needs a lot of other things, right? So if, for example, that Intuit Dome that we talked about, that is a agglomeration of lots and lots of different technologies. It's immersive technology, but not in a sense of putting a headset on and being just by yourself.
Thank God.
But yeah, exactly. But in a sense of having a two-sided halo that everybody's looking at. It does require low latency when they're trying to do this real-time replays of major parts of, like, if there's a foul or whatever, right? Then they want to be able to show that. And this whole partnership between AT&T and Steve Ballmer and the Clippers team has been around not just 5G and that, but also fiber, right? It's like John Stankey was saying there's like 7.5 miles of fiber that went into that to enable it. It also has these zoom through kiosk that people can go in and buy things. It's a mobile app. So it's like a lot of things that come together that make that happen. So and that makes it much richer. So a lot of these applications will come from connectivity in addition to a lot of other things.
Yeah, and a lot of it, again, it's not just cellular or cellular versus Wi-Fi, not even just cellular, Wi-Fi, and fiber. There is
Exactly.
a lot of other, short-range technologies that are really becoming really very, very important for all the IoT and, any device that is not attached to your mobile phone. And all those technologies have to kind of work at the same time in the same place.
Exactly. Like in this venue, for
Exactly.
example,
Yeah.
various facilities, they have these IoT devices to detect leaks and or like they have microphones to make sure the fans are making noise and they get awarded. And then there's like all kinds of sensors that are happening there. But not every sensor is a 5G sensor, right? A lot of them are connected to other kinds of networks, and then the gateway might be a 5G gateway. So kind of like we all need to be open about the fact that this intersection of various technologies is where big applications can come from.
Yeah, absolutely. Our time is up, but I think that every single point you had could be worth an episode on its own. So I try to be very restrained in digging deeper, but there is a lot, and I think that what we kind of covered, right, is that there is so much to learn that is going to help us be in a better position as we move forward. And we need to move forward. There's a lot of
Absolutely. And I
potential.
think that, and I think that hopefully these insights will help us as we move to the second half of 5G rollouts. And then in the next year or two, when we talk about 5G success, then we'll see more success and that's measurable.
Yeah, and absolutely. And not to just say, oh, we need to wait for 6G, because I don't think that's
Exactly.
really,
I think that's a little bit of a just kicking the can down the road.
yeah, there's a lot more that we can do before we get to 6G to keep us busy.
Yeah.
Azita, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us today. It was absolutely great, as always, to talk to you.
Thank you so much, Monica. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
And thank you all for listening and to this Sparring Partners. And I hope you will continue to do so. Sign up for the podcast